Want to master grammar so you can speak properly, express yourself better, and understand more? In this video, I'll show you how to master grammar with our lessons and learning program. Let's begin. Number 1. Listen to the lesson conversations and explanations. In every lesson, you learn a conversation. Then, our teachers break down every word and grammar rule. So you're actually learning grammar rules in the context of conversations, and you can easily see how they're used. Once you're done, review the conversation again and again to remember what you've learned. Number 2. Read the bonus explanations and tutorials. With the lesson notes, you get extra grammar explanations and examples that are not presented in the lesson. After you're done with the lesson, read the lesson notes for extra review. You can even save them as PDFs so that you can access them anytime. Number 3. Leave a comment on the lesson. Once you've learned a grammar point, be sure to use it. Leave a comment in the comments section. Write some example sentences for practice. Our teachers will review your comment and give you feedback. Number 4. Unlock even more grammar lessons. If you want to find all of the grammar lessons available, visit our lesson library. Under Category, choose Grammar. You'll get all of the pathways and lessons dedicated to helping you learn and master sentence patterns and grammar points. So, if you're ready to finally learn a new language the fast, fun, and easy way, sign up for your free lifetime account by clicking on the link in the description. Signing up takes less than 30 seconds, and you'll start speaking from your very first lesson. If you enjoyed these tips, hit the like button, share it with anyone who's trying to learn a new language, and subscribe to our channel. We release new videos every week. I'll see you next time. Bye! Hi, welcome to Introduction to Korean. My name is Alicia, and I'm joined by...
Hi everyone, I'm Jae-hee.
In this lesson, you'll learn the basics of Korean grammar. Word order refers to the order in which words are structured to form a sentence in a given language. Consider the English sentence, I saw a movie. But first, let's remove the article a here for simplicity. So we're just left with I saw movie. The basic word order for English is subject, verb, object, or SVO for short. If we break down the English sentence, I saw a movie, we can see that the subject I is presented first, followed by the verb saw, and then finally the object movie is positioned last. This is the basic word order for sentences in English.
Now, let's compare the same sentence, I saw a movie, in Korean. 나는 영화를 봤어요. If we break down the Korean sentence, we get the subject 나, meaning I, then comes the object 영화, meaning movie, and finally we have the verb 봤어요, meaning saw. The word order for Korean then is subject, object, verb, or SOV for short.
In both languages, the subject is presented first. In English, though, it's followed by the verb and then the object, compared to the object being first and the verb last in Korean. The same sentence in Korean is essentially I movie saw, subject first, then object and verb last, SOV. This is the basic word order for sentences in Korean.
Okay, let's move on to the next section.
English is what is called a subject-prominent language. This simply means that the subject is slightly more important than other components in the sentence. It's the key piece of information other components in the sentence relate to. Who is doing the action is slightly more important than what is being done or which object it's been done to in English. If we had to slowly remove pieces of information from a sentence while trying to keep its essence intact, logically we would do so in order of least important to most important. If we were to omit the subject, we would get saw a movie, which sounds strange. On the other hand, if we were to omit the object instead, the sentence would become I saw. Even though in each instance we omitted a piece of information, the reason I saw sounds less strange is because we've yet to break any grammatical rules, and so there's still potential for the sentence fragment to become a complete sentence and to become grammatically correct. Since the latter is logical, this indicates that the subject is more important than the object in English. The same is true if we had omitted the verb. Since the subject is the integral component in the sentence, this makes English a subject-prominent language.
Korean, on the other hand, is a topic-prominent language, Unlike English, the focus of each Korean sentence is the topic, not the subject. Essentially, the watched a movie portion, 영화를 봤어요, is the main focus of the sentence. The subject I can be omitted.
In fact, if it's obvious what the subject is, or if it's already been established, it's quite normal to omit the subject from the conversation altogether in Korean. Let's look at this aspect in a bit more detail. More often than not, if you wanted to say, I saw a movie in Korean, you would not say,
나는 영화를 봤어요.
Instead, you would more likely say, movie saw in Korean.
영화를 봤어요.
Korean is a topic-prominent language. Thus, the information to be shared is the act of seeing a movie. The subject is less important and is usually omitted altogether. Most Korean sentences are constructed and spoken like this in real life.
영화를 봤어요.
On the other hand, when it's unclear who or what the subject is, or if you wanted to place emphasis on the subject, like if you wanted to specify from a group of people that it was you who saw the movie, then you would include the subject.
제가 영화를 봤어요.
But more often than not, in spoken Korean, you can omit the subject, particularly if that subject is you.
선물을 샀어요. 택시를 타고 돌아왔어요.
Knowing this, we can easily express any simple action in Korean using just the object and the verb. Try to create the sentence, I ate an apple, from these sets of words.
먹었어요. 사과를.
Got it? The object goes first, so let's put apple here. And the verb goes last, so let's put ate at the end. Finally, we connect them using the appropriate particle. And that's it.
사과를 먹었어요.
Which means, I ate an apple in Korean.
사과를 먹었어요.
Well done. Let's wrap up this lesson by recapping what we've learned. In this lesson, you learned that Korean sentences are formed using a subject-object-verb, or SOV, word order. The most important aspect of Korean sentences is not the subject, but the topic of the sentence. Most sentences spoken in Korean will not actually contain a subject, especially if that subject is obvious. And lastly, you can create basic sentences in Korean by putting the object first and the verb last. We've covered only the very basics of Korean grammar. If you're interested in learning more, check out our Korean in 3 Minutes video series. In that course, we teach you useful phrases while covering the fundamentals of Korean grammar, and each lesson is only 3 minutes long. In the next lesson, we'll introduce you to the basics of Korean writing. See you in the next lesson. Bye!
다음에 또 만나요.
Want to speak real Korean from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at KoreanClass101.com.
Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why is 네, meaning your, sometimes pronounced ni in Korean? 네 is the shortened version of the casual possessive 너희, meaning your. It often gets pronounced as ni instead of 네 in spoken Korean. For example, how do you say your computer in Korean? Even though it's written as 내 컴퓨터, most people pronounce it as 네 컴퓨터. Here's a tricky sentence with some similar sounding words. 이거 내 거야, 내 거야. This means, is this mine or yours? Can you hear the difference between 내, meaning mine, and 내, meaning yours? 이거 내 거야, 내 거야. Since it's very difficult to hear and pronounce, many people say 이거 내 거야, 네 거야. So basically, 네 is sometimes pronounced ni in spoken Korean because it sounds very similar to 내, meaning my. But remember, even though many people pronounce 네 as ni, make sure to use 네 when you write in Korean. I hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, does yo make everything more polite in Korean? The short answer is yes. With the particle yo, you can make words sound more polite. So how can you make a sentence ending with yo? Here are some rules. First, let's do a very simple one. when the verb stem ends in a vowel like the ka in 가다, meaning to go, you can simply replace 다 with 요. We don't need any additional particles. However, when the verb stem ends in a consonant like 놀 in 놀다, meaning to play, we need the extra vowel 아 before 요 to say 놀아요. But that's not all. In Korean, we have some vowels called negative vowels. For example, u, and 으. When the last vowel of the word is a negative one, you will need to use instead of 아. Here's an example. 먹 is the verb stem of the verb 먹다, meaning to eat. The verb stem ends in a consonant, so you might think you need to add 아 and say 먹어요 to make it polite. However, this is not correct. Remember, we also need to check the last vowel, and this time the last vowel of the verb stem is which is negative. So you need to say 먹어요 using Sounds complicated, right? Don't worry. As you hear more verbs with the 요 particle, it will come more naturally to you. Let's do one more example because we have one final rule for using the particle 요. A lot of Korean verbs are made with 하다, meaning to do. For example, 공부하다, meaning to study. When you want to make a 하다 verb polite, just replace 하다 with 해요. So 공부하다 becomes 공부해요. Since there are so many 하다 verbs in Korean, you can practice with the 하다 verbs first. Then you only have 2 more conjugation rules to master. Is this still confusing? You get the hang of it with more practice. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 은 and 는? 은 and 는 are called topic marking particles and are placed after noun to specify what's being discussed. Using a topic marking particle is one way to designate a noun as the subject of a sentence. The main functions of 은 and 는 are to bring attention to remind the listener about the topic, to clarify the topic, or to contrast 2 items. You can use 는 when the previous syllabic block ends in a vowel, and 은 when the previous syllabic block ends in a consonant. Let's take a look at some examples so you can learn how to use 은 and 는 correctly. When there's not a specific topic being talked about in a conversation, a topic marking particle can be used to bring attention to what the speaker wants to talk about. For example, 한국어 공부는 좋아하세요? Meaning, do you like studying Korean? Here, the speaker draws attention to the topic of Korean study. If a topic has already been introduced in the conversation, you don't need to mention it again. However, if the speaker wishes to clarify what's being spoken about, a topic marking particle is used to clarify the topic of the sentence. From our previous example about studying, we can say 한국어 공부는 재미있어요. Studying Korean is fun. A topic marking particle can also be used to contrast items. 저는 한국어 공부가 재미있어요. Literally, as for me, studying Korean is fun. Another person might respond, 저는 영어 공부가 재미있어요. As for me, studying English is fun. These sentences use the topic marking particle to contrast the other person who is interested in studying a different language. That's it. I hope that answers your question. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you pronounce the consonant 리을? In Korean, the L and R sounds come from the same underlying consonant 리을. If you put your tongue in between making an L and making an R, you are almost there. The question is, when does it sound more like R or more like L? If the consonant 리을 is between 2 vowels, then it will usually have the English R sound. However, if it is at the beginning or end of the word or precedes a consonant, it'll have more of an English L sound. Let's break it down with some examples so you can clearly hear how to pronounce the consonant 리을. Let's take the word radio, which means radio. And this word, the consonant 리을, is at the beginning of the word, so it'll have an L sound. Let's do another example with the word 미래, meaning future. Here, the 리을 consonant is between the vowels E and 에, so it'll have more of an R sound. Let's say it together, 미래. Let's do one more example with the L pronunciation. We'll use the word 말, which means word or language. The 리을 consonant is at the end of the word, so it'll be pronounced as L. Let's say it together, 말. Remember that in English, some L sounds are hard, like the L's in ball. In ball, you put some tension in the back of your mouth to make it stronger. In Korean, the L sound is much lighter without any tension. So remembering where not to put the tension, especially at the end of the words, will be really helpful for sounding more natural in Korean. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why do Korean people sometimes use 우리, meaning our, when they actually mean my? Korean people sometimes use the word 우리, meaning our, instead of my, when talking about a group that he or she is a part of. For example, my family, 우리 가족. It literally means our family, and the list goes on. For example, 우리 엄마, my mom, or literally our mom. Korean people use the word 우리 when talking about a group that he or she is strongly attached to, like a family member. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use 우리 correctly. Let's say you want to introduce your coworker to your friend. You would say 우리 회사 동료야. This is my coworker. 우리 회사 literally means our company, but you and your friend do not work at the same company. So what you actually mean is my company. By saying 우리 회사, you express a sense of belonging. Let's do another example. Let's say someone asks you how many people are in your family. If there are 4 people in your family, you say 우리 가족은 4명입니다. There are 4 people in my family, or literally, there are 4 people in our family. This use of our doesn't mean that the speaker and the listener are siblings. The speaker uses 우리 because he or she feels strongly attached to his or her family. Let's do one more example. Say you have a best friend named Mark, and Mark has a brother named Andy, whom you're also close with. In this case, you can refer to Andy as 우리 Andy and as Mark, 우리 Andy는 지금 뭐해? Meaning, what is Andy doing now? Or literally, what is our Andy doing now? This is to show your close friendship with Andy. You can also use 우리 when referring to things you're particularly attached to, such as 우리 집, my home, and 우리 차, my car. Try using 우리 the next time you talk to your Korean friends and see how you sound. How was it? I hope that helps. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everyone, I'm Jae-hui. In this video, we'll be talking about top 25 Korean phrases. Okay, let's see what we have first. 안녕하세요. Hello. This is the greeting that you can use for the formal situation. When you meet someone for the first time, you can say 안녕하세요. 만나서 반갑습니다, which means hello, it's nice to meet you. Or with your friend, you can just say 안녕 without 하세요, just to say hello to your friend. 여보세요. Hello on the phone. You have to use a different phrase when you want to say hello on the phone. So say 띠리리리링 안녕 안녕하세요. 띠리리리리 여보세요. 여보세요. That's so you can say 안녕하세요 when you're talking on the phone. It sounds weird. 오랜만이에요. Long time no see. When you're just shopping in the department store and you see someone you haven't met for a long time, you can just say 오랜만이에요 to mean long time no see. Or with friend, you can say 오랜만이야, long time no see. 안녕히 주무세요, good night. Actually, it literally means please sleep well. So you can use this phrase only with someone who is living together with you, like your parents. So to your parents, 안녕히 주무세요. So at night, you can say 안녕히 주무세요. Then your parents should be, and then you'll be 잘 자, good night. So 잘 자 is informal way to say good night. So to your wife, to your husband, brother, or sister, you can just say 잘 자, and then you can just go back to sleep. 안녕히 계세요, goodbye. There are two ways to say goodbye. This one is the one that you can use when you leave. Let's say you are invited to someone's house. You had a really great time, you leave. In that case, you can say 안녕히 계세요. 안녕히 가세요. Goodbye. Let's say you are the host of the party. You invited everyone to your home, had a really great time, and then everyone is leaving now. You want to say 안녕히 가세요 because your stay, everyone else is leaving. For example, you can say 안녕히 가세요. 와주셔서 감사합니다, which means goodbye, thank you for coming. 만나서 반가워요. Nice to meet you. When you meet someone for the first time, you can say 안녕하세요, then say 만나서 반가워요. Or if someone is younger than you can just say 만나서 반가워 in informal way. So for those who just watched the video of me for the first time, let me say 만나서 반가워요. 모르겠어요. I do not know. Let's say on the street, you're in Seoul, someone asks you something in Korean, you don't know. You have no idea what he's talking about. Then you can just simply say 모르겠어요. I do not know. In informal way, 모르겠어. 감사합니다. Thank you. Let's say you got a gift and you can say 선물 감사합니다. Thank you for the gift. So you can just simply say 감사합니다 or the noun plus 감사합니다 to mean thank you for something. 고맙습니다. Thank you. You can say 감사합니다 or 고맙습니다 to say thank you, but if you want to make it sound more friendly, you can say 고맙습니다. 선물 고맙습니다. Thank you for the gift. 초대 감사합니다. Thank you for the invitation. 잠깐만 기다려주세요. Wait a moment, please. Let's say you're late and you see your boss is about to leave. 잠깐만 기다려주세요. 죄송합니다. Sorry. 죄송합니다. 죄송합니다. 미안합니다. Sorry. Don't use this when you make a big mistake, but if it is not big, then you can just say 미안합니다. That's enough. So when you bump into someone on the street, then you can say this. 미안합니다. Because it's not a big mistake. 알겠습니다. I understand. So let's say you made a huge mistake at your company and your boss will be like, 너 지금 뭐 하는 거야? You can say, after listening to everything, you can say, 알겠습니다. I understand. 선생님 질문 있어요. 선생님 이름이 뭐예요? 알겠습니다. 잘 다녀오세요. Have a good journey. You can say that to those who are going to take a big trip, but usually we also use that to a father who is about to go to work, and we just say 잘 다녀오세요. 좋은 하루 되세요. Have a nice day. 잘 다녀오세요 literally means please go out and come back safely. So you can say only when someone is leaving and you are staying in and waiting for that person. 이름이 뭐예요? What's your name? 이름이 뭐예요? 이름이 뭐예요? 재휘예요. 네. 이름이 뭐예요? 재휘입니다. 알겠습니다. 이름이 뭐예요? What's your name? 제 이름은 입니다. My name is 제 이름은 이재휘입니다. My name is 이재휘. 안녕. 어서 오세요. Welcome. So you got into the store and you hear 어서 오세요 or 어서 오세요. Or you got a guest coming into your place. You can say 어서 오세요. Welcome. 실례합니다. Excuse me. You have to catch your bus and you have to go through the crowd. Then you have to say 실례합니다. 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 When you want to ask a question, you can also say 실례합니다. Then your question. 잘 먹겠습니다. I will eat well. Thank you for the meal. You're at the restaurant, you got a lot of food, and you're about to eat. Before you eat, you have to say 잘 먹겠습니다. Even if you're alone, you have to say 잘 먹겠습니다. 잘 먹겠습니다. 잘 먹었습니다. I ate well. Thank you for the meal. 잘 먹었습니다. When you leave a restaurant, you can say 잘 먹었습니다 to the staff to say thank you for the meal. 맛있게 드세요. Bon appetit. Let's say this is the food that I made with seaweed, huge seaweed. 오, 맛있게 드세요. 맛있게 드세요. 잘 먹겠습니다. I'm hungry. 이거 얼마예요? How much is this? So you go to shopping, you found the item you really want to have, and then you can say 이거 얼마예요? 저거 얼마예요? 그거 얼마예요? Then you get the price, but don't accept that. You have to try the discount. Say 깎아주세요 to get you discount. That's all top 25 Korean phrases. Thank you for watching it and please make sure to subscribe. 좋은 하루 보내세요. Have a nice day. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you say the vowels O and U correctly? These two vowels sound similar, so they can be a little tricky to pronounce. The vowel O sounds like a very round O, like in the words oval and orange. The vowel U sounds more likely the U sound in the words moon and room. Let's break it down with some examples so you can hear the difference between O and U more clearly. Let's take the word 공, which means bowl in Korean. 공 has the vowel O, which makes a round O sound. Now, let's take another word 궁, which usually means palace. This word has the U vowel. It's going to have more of an U sound. A good way to practice these vowels is by alternating between them while repeating, like this. 공, 궁, 공, 궁. Can you hear the difference? Let's do one more example. The word 오후, meaning afternoon, has both the O and U vowels. Once you have mastered saying 공 and 궁, try repeating the word 오후 and see how you sound. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time.
Want to get cheat sheets, audiobooks, lessons, apps, and much more every month for free? Just click the link in the description to get your free language gifts of the month.
Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, what is the correct pronunciation of 으? There's no English equivalent for this sound, so it may be a little difficult to pronounce. The vowel 으 has the same tone position as the Korean vowel U, but the shape of your mouth is wider. You may find it easier to compare it to the E sound in the words broken and eaten, or the O sound in the word button. One insider tip is to pull your lips wide to the sides and expose your bottom teeth as you say 으. It may seem silly at first, but you'll get the hang of it. Let's break it down with some examples so you can understand the pronunciation of 으 more easily. Let's use the word 하늘, meaning sky, as an example. Many people mispronounce the last syllable as 눌, so be careful. Let's say the word 하늘. Another example is the word 크다, which means to be big. Again, be careful with the first syllable. It's not pronounced like 크. Listen one more time. 크다. One last example is the word 가르치다, meaning to teach. One more time, it's not pronounced 가르치다, but 가르치다. Again, this vowel 으 is much wider than the vowel 우. Listen one more time slowly. 가르치다. Because the Korean vowel 으 doesn't exist in English, it can be difficult to distinguish when you hear Korean. Please listen carefully to the pronunciation of native speakers to completely understand how this vowel is pronounced. How was it? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I say F and V in Korean? Actually, there are no fu and vu sounds in Korean. In fact, there is no difference between pu and fu or bu and vu. Therefore, the pu and fu sounds are both pronounced as piup and bu and vu as biup. Let's go through some examples so you can learn how to make these sounds in Korean. Let's say your name is Fred. How would you write it in Korean? Since fu corresponds with pu in Korean, you'd write it as 프레드 using piup. Another example will be with the name Victoria. Since vu corresponds with bu, you'd write it as Victoria, changing the vu sound to bu sound. Let's do one more with a tricky name like Joseph. Here, the ph makes an fu sound, so you need to use piup, and the name will be written as Joseph. Although the Korean alphabet doesn't distinguish between pu and fu or bu and vu, many Korean people nowadays are learning the differences. So if you have one of these letters in your name, just tell your Korean friends how you'd like your name to be pronounced. And that's it. I hope that clears things up. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do you pronounce the consonants 시옷 and 쌍시옷? Sometimes Korean characters change their sound depending on their placement in the word. 시옷 and 쌍시옷 are both good examples. Let's go over how to pronounce 시옷 and 쌍시옷 correctly. When 시옷 is at the beginning of a word, it makes an s sound. When it's the final consonant in Korean 받침, it changes to a t sound. When 쌍시옷 is at the beginning of a word, it makes a s sound. But when it's in the 받침 position, it also changes to a t sound. Let's see some examples so you can hear how they sound. In the Korean word 사랑, which means love, the 시옷 is at the beginning of the word. Therefore, it's pronounced as 스. Here's an example with 시옷 as the final consonant. In the word 맛, meaning taste, the 시옷 is in the 받침 position, so it's pronounced as 트. Now, let's take a look at some examples with 쌍시옷. The word 쓰다, which means to write, begins with 쌍시옷, so the beginning of the word has a 스 sound. Another example would be 있다, which is the Korean word for the verb to be. Here, the 쌍시옷 is in the 받침 position, so it's pronounced as 트. Here's a quick tip. Sometimes the rules for 받침 sounds change, so make sure to check out our 하나하나 한글 videos at koreanclass101.com to find out more about 받침 rules. There you have it. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요.
Want to speak real Korean from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at koreanclass101.com.
Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 은 and 는? 은 and 는 are called topic marking particles and are placed after noun to specify what's being discussed. Using a topic marking particle is one way to designate a noun as the subject of a sentence. The main functions of 은 and 는 are to bring attention to remind the listener about the topic, to clarify the topic, or to contrast two items. You can use 는 when the previous syllabic block ends in a vowel, and 은 when the previous syllabic block ends in a consonant. Let's take a look at some examples so you can learn how to use 은 and 는 correctly. When there's not a specific topic being talked about in a conversation, a topic marking particle can be used to bring attention to what the speaker wants to talk about. For example, 한국어 공부는 좋아하세요? Meaning, do you like studying Korean? Here, the speaker draws attention to the topic of Korean study. If a topic has already been introduced in the conversation, you don't need to mention it again. However, if the speaker wishes to clarify what's being spoken about, a topic marking particle is used to clarify the topic of the sentence. From our previous example about studying, we can say 한국어 공부는 재미있어요. Studying Korean is fun. A topic marking particle can also be used to contrast items. 저는 한국어 공부가 재미있어요. Literally, as for me, studying Korean is fun. Another person might respond, 저는 영어 공부가 재미있어요. As for me, studying English is fun. These sentences use topic marking particle to contrast the other person who is interested in studying a different language. That's it. I hope that answers your question. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is the consonant iung always silent? Usually, the consonant iung works as a placeholder and doesn't have any sound. However, when placed in the 받침 position, which is the final consonant in a Korean word, it has an ng sound. We'll break it down with a few examples. Let's take the word 아이, which means child. In this word, the iung in each syllable works as a placeholder and only the vowels are pronounced. Another example is the word 강, which means river. Please note that in this case, the iung is at the end, so the word 강 ends with an ng sound. The last example has iung in two places, one at the beginning and the other at the end. That word is 왕, which means king. In this case, you don't pronounce the iung at the beginning of the word. Only say the wa and pronounce the iung at the end of the word as ng. So all you need to remember is that if the iung is at the beginning of the word, it has no sound. And if it is at the end of the word, it has an ng sound. It's that simple. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how many ways can you say yes in Korean? There are two formal ways to say yes in Korean. The one you might think of first is 네. But actually, the first official standard Korean word for yes is 예. Did you know that 네 only became standard in 1988? Nowadays, people use both. There are also two informal ways to say yes. If you're talking with close friends or people younger than you, you can use the words 응 and 응 usually sounds cute and typically has a more masculine sound. Let's break it down with some examples so you know which yes to use and when to use it. Say, for example, you're talking to your boss. Your boss asks if you finished the project you've been working on. To answer yes, you can use either 예 or 네. 예 is a little more polite. Let's imagine another scenario where you're talking to your friend. Your friend wants to know if you're going to come over to his house tomorrow. In this case, you can use either 응 or In our last situation, let's imagine you're talking to your mom. She is asking you if you finished your homework yet. Now, some Koreans speak to their parents using polite Korean and some don't. So this answer differs from family to family. In this case, you can use any of the words we've mentioned for yes, depending on the situation. An interesting tip worth noting is that because 예 was the original word for yes in Korean, the older generation tends to use it more. On the other hand, the younger generation tends to use 네, so it's good to know both. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, what's the difference between 이에요 and 예요? Both 이에요 and 예요 are used to write the English verb to be. So how do you know which one to use? The answer is actually pretty simple. If the last word of the sentence ends in a consonant, you add 이에요. If the last word ends in a vowel, you use 예요. Let's break it down with some examples so you know which ending to use and when to use it. Let's say you want to introduce your new friend, 민수. How would you say this is 민수? 민수 ends in a vowel, so you say 민수예요 with the 예요 ending. Let's do another example with the word 선물, which means gift or present. Imagine that you bought something for your friend. How would you say it's a gift? Since 선물 ends in a consonant, you say 선물이에요 with the 이에요 ending. One final example will be where you use both. For example, you see a drink on the table and you want to ask, is it juice or water? The Korean word for juice, 주스, ends in a vowel, and the word for water, 물, ends in a consonant. So what do? Here's a hint. You have to ask two questions, one ending in 예요 and the other in 이에요. Do you know the answer? The answer is 주스예요, 물이에요? Remember, even if you make a mistake, you'll still be able to get your point across. However, knowing the difference is a great way to improve how natural you sound in Korean. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why do 입니다 and 합니다 sound like 입니다 and 합니다? If you've just started studying Korean, you may have a little difficulty pronouncing Hangul, the Korean alphabet. You may have also noticed that sometimes the pronunciation of some combinations is different than they might appear on their own. Why? Because Korean has 4 nasal consonant sounds. When the nasal consonant sounds are paired with non-nasal consonant sounds, the pronunciation changes. For example, if you just read the Hangul on their own, you might want to say 입니다 and 합니다. But the correct pronunciations are actually 입니다 and 합니다. The nasal consonant sounds in Korean are 니은, 리을, 미음, and 이응. If you pair them with a non-nasal consonant sound, for example, 비읍, the pronunciation changes. This makes them easier to pronounce. So if you pair 비읍 with 니은, you can pronounce 비읍 as 미음. Finally, you'll get 입니다 instead of 입니다. Let's do another example. 국물 is the Korean word for soup. The consonant 기역 is for G sound in English, so you can read it as 국. But it's paired with the nasal sound 미음, so it changes the pronunciation from a G sound to an NG sound, and you need to read it as 국물. Just remember that if you see 2 consonants next to each other, check if one of them is nasal. If it is, both of them will have a nasal sound. Pretty interesting, right? I hope that answers the question. Please leave any more questions in the comments below, and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use the pronoun you in Korean? Basically, the word 당신 means you in Korean, but it doesn't mean you the same way it does in English. If you're a fan of K-pop or Korean dramas, you'll hear this word a lot. But please be careful. You'll use this pronoun only when you're talking to 2 types of people, those you love and those you hate. If, for example, you say 당신 to your husband or wife, it'll mean something like honey or darling. However, if you're angry, you can also use the pronoun 당신 to initiate conflict with someone. In Korean, as with Japanese, we don't use you so often because it sounds really strong. Instead, people usually use the person's name followed by an honorific suffix such as 씨 to refer to someone they are speaking to in a conversation. For example, 재휘 씨 is like saying Mr. 재휘. Unlike in English though, the 씨 added on the end is natural and conveys respect. People will also use job titles in place of 씨, such as 선생님. This literally means teacher, but it can also function like Mr. or Mrs. too. Because you or 당신 is so strong in Korean, you can only use it for people you want to direct strong feelings toward. If the person you want to address is someone like a stranger or coworker, it's better to use the honorific suffix she or their job title, as we mentioned earlier. If you want to address a group of people, you can use the word 여러분, meaning everyone. I hope that clears things up. Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why do Korean people drop particles when they are speaking? Particles are a pretty big challenge for Korean learners, but don't worry. Koreans actually drop them a lot of the time. Let's use 나는 이 음식이 좋아요 as an example. 나는 이 음식이 좋아요 means I like this food in Korean. In this sentence, 는 and 이 are the particles. But when you hear a native Korean speaker say this sentence, he or she will usually just say 나 이 음식 좋아요 without the particles. You don't need them to make the meaning of the sentence clear. Here's another example. If you want to comment on someone's height, you could say 그 사람은 키가 커요, which means he's tall. However, if you want to sound more natural, you can say 그 사람 키 커요. Here, the particles 은 and 가 are omitted. Please remember though, in formal situations, it's best to use the particles. Although it does sound more natural to omit them when talking to friends, you'll want to be careful with your boss or teachers. Learning the particles is important for understanding sentence structure in Korean, but once you've mastered them, you may want to practice leaving them out. See how you sound. I hope that clears things up. Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why does 기억 sometimes sound like kiuk? Many Korean learners wonder why some Korean consonants don't sound like their English equivalents. Have you ever wondered why 기억 sometimes sound like k and not g, or why 디귿 sometimes sound like t instead of d? It's because some consonants change their sounds depending on their location in the sentence. For example, the consonants 기억, 디귿, 비읍, and 치읓 are pronounced more strongly when they are at the beginning of a word. This is similar to their aspirated pairs 키읔, 티읕, 피읍, and 치읓. Aspirated describes that strong puff of breath that is used on some words. You can hear it on the p's and the words pet and pin in English. Let's break it down with the word 가방, which means bag. Usually, the consonant 기억 sounds like an English G. However, if it's at the beginning of the word, it takes on the English K sound, 가방. Let's do another example with the word 바다, which means sea. The pronunciation of 비읍 in this word is different than the one in 가방. In this case, the 비읍 is pronounced more like 피읍. Try saying the words 가방 and 바다 out loud and see how you sound. Let's do one more example with the word for bike, 자전거. This word has the letter 치읓 twice, so you can really hear the difference. The first 치읓 has the harder puff of breath, whereas the second 치읓 is a little bit softer. 자전거. Sometimes the sounds can be a little difficult to distinguish, so it's good to separate them into two categories. The hard 기역, 디귿, 비읍, and 치읓 sounds, and the soft 기역, 디귿, 비읍, and 지읒 sounds. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Do you have any more questions? Leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time.
Want to speak real Korean from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at KoreanClass101.com.
Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 이 and 가? The subject marking particles 이 and 가 are used to mark the subject of a sentence. These are used when the subject is being introduced for the first time. 이 is used if the subject ends in a consonant, and 가 is used if the subject ends in a vowel. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use the subject marking particles correctly. Let's use 여기가 제 집입니다, meaning here's my house, as an example. In this sentence, we use the subject marking particle 가 next to the noun 여기, meaning here, to mark the noun 여기 as the subject of this sentence. Let's do another example. When you meet someone for the first time, you may ask, 이름이 무엇입니까? What's your name? Here, we use the subject marking particle 이 next to the noun 이름, meaning name. This is because the topic, his or her name, is being introduced for the first time. There are certain verbs that use the subject marking particles as part of a set. Some common verbs are 아니다, 있다, and 없다, which mean not, to exist, and not to exist, respectively. Generally speaking, whenever the verbs 아니다, 있다, and 없다 are used in the sentence marking particle is used as well to mark what exists and what doesn't exist. For example, 학생이 아닙니다, meaning I'm not a student. An important thing to remember is that Korean often contains double subjects, with one being marked by the topic marker and the other marked by the subject marker. For example, 저는 학생이 아닙니다, meaning I'm not a student. It has two subjects, 저, meaning I, and 학생, meaning student. The topic of the sentence is 저, meaning I, so it uses 는, the topic marking particle. 학생, student, is the subject, so it uses the subject marking particle 이. This can be translated as for me, I'm not a student. And that's it. I hope that helps. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 을 and 를? We use the object marking particles 을 and 를 to mark the object of a sentence when it's attached to a noun. We attach 을 to nouns that end in consonants and attach 를 to nouns that end in vowels. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use 을 and 를 correctly. Let's use the sentence 그들은 서울을 잘 모릅니다 as an example. It literally means they don't know Seoul that well. Here, Seoul acts as the object of this sentence. The word ends in a consonant, so we'll use the object marking particle 을. Let's do one that ends in a vowel. 저는 한국어를 잘 합니다. Literally, I'm good in Korean, but more naturally, my Korean is good. Here, the object 한국어, Korean, ends in a vowel, so we need to use 를. Let's do another example with a consonant. Take 저는 그들을 잘 압니다, meaning I know them well. In this sentence, you can use the object marking particle 을 because the pronoun 그들, meaning they, ends in a consonant. How was it? Hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 에 and 에서? In English, you use words such as at, in, on, to, and from to talk about location. In Korean, you need location marking particles when giving directions or talking about where something is. The particle 에 can be translated as at, to, on, or in, depending on the context. The particle 에서 can also mean at, in, or from, and marks where an action is performed or a temporary point of departure. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use 에 and 에서 correctly. Let's use the sentence 저는 집에 있습니다, meaning I am at home. In this sentence, the particle 에 indicates the location where I exist. The particle is located right after the noun 집 to indicate the location. Let's do an example using an action. 저는 한국에서 일합니다, meaning I work in Korea. Here, the particle 에서 is used to mark the location of an action, which is 한국, Korea. Let's do one more example using temporary point of departure, which can be translated as from. 그는 방금 외국에서 돌아왔습니다. Meaning he just came back from abroad. Here the particle 에서 is marking where he is coming from, which is 외국, abroad. If it's still a little confusing, just remember this. Place plus 에서, meaning in or at, marks the location of an action. Okay, I hope that makes more sense now. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I use 명 and 분 correctly when counting in Korean? In Korea, formality is really important. Therefore, even words for counting or counters can serve as honorifics in Korean. For example, 명 is a counter used to refer to people. However, when you're talking about people who are older or of a high status, you should use 분. It's an honorific counter used to refer to people. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use 명 and 분 correctly. When you go into a restaurant, the staff member will probably ask you how many to check how many people you'll be dining with. In Korean, you'll be asked either 몇 명이세요 or 몇 분이세요. Of course, the latter is more formal and polite. Then, how should you respond? Can you also use either 명 or 분? The answer is no. You can only use 명. This is because you're referring to yourself and the group that you're a part of. You should only use honorifics to show respect to others. Let's do one more example. Which counter should you use to say there are 40 people in my company? Since you're referring to yourself and your workplace, you need to use 명. Therefore, you say 우리 회사에는 40명이 있습니다. How was this lesson? I hope that clears things up. Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. 다음 시간에 만나요. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, why does Korean have two words for my? The word 저희 literally means of I or mine. It has two words. 저 means I, and 의 is the possessive particle meaning something like of. 제 is the simplified form of the word 저희. In normal daily conversation, Koreans use 제 instead of 저희. If you want to make your sentence more casual, you can also use the word 네. 네 is the simplified version of the word 나, meaning I, and 의, the possessive particle. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use each word for my correctly. When you introduce yourself at a job interview, you should use 제. For example, 제 이름은 이재휘입니다. My name is Jae-hee Lee. However, if one of your close friends introduces you to a new friend, you can use the casual one, 네. 내 이름은 이재휘야. I'm Jae-hee Lee. Let's say you want to introduce your younger sister to your friend. If you're introducing her to someone younger than you, you'd say 내 여동생이야. It's my younger sister. Or if you're introducing her to someone older or your superior, you should use the humble form of mine and say 제 여동생이에요. One more thing. Did you notice how formal sentence endings 입니다 and 요 pair with 제? Please remember to use the formal sentence endings when you use the word 제 to an elderly or superior. How was this lesson? Pretty interesting, right? Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, when should I use the humble form of verbs in Korean? There are some verbs in Korean that have humble forms and don't sound like their casual counterparts. We use these verbs when we refer to ourselves in formal situations. Two examples are 들이다 and 여쭈다. These two verbs are used instead of 주다 and 묻다 for to give and to ask respectively. Let's do some examples so you can learn how to use the humble forms of these verbs correctly. Let's say you want to ask a professor a question. How do you say, I'd like to ask you something? To show respect to your professor, you should use the humble form of to ask, 여쭈다, and say, 뭐 좀 여쭐게요. 좀 is another verb that makes your sentence sound softer. It sounds more polite than saying, 뭐 좀 물어볼게요, because it uses the humble verb. Let's do another example. Now, you want to ask whether or not your classmate has turned in a group report. How do you say, did you give it to the professor? Here, even though you're talking to your friend, you're talking about the professor. So you still need to use the humble form and say, 교수님 드렸어? Did you give it to the professor? Here's a challenge. How can you say to your friend, give it to me, I'll give it to the professor? That's right. We need both 주다 and 드리다 for these sentences. 주다 for the first sentence and 드리다 for the second sentence. So you'll get 나줘, 내가 교수님 드릴게, meaning give it to me, I'll give it to the professor. How was this lesson? I hope that clears things up. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, what are the differences between the number systems in Korean? There are two number systems in Korean. One is called the native Korean number system, and the other is called the Sino-Korean number system. The native Korean number system is used for general counting, like when you're counting out loud up to 99. It's also used to count people, hours, things, ages, and more. Sino-Korean numbers are used for things like dates, money, minutes, addresses, phone numbers, and numbers above 99. Let's go through some examples so you can understand how to use native Korean numbers and Sino-Korean numbers correctly. Let's say you want to buy 2 apples. Since the number 2 is below 99, you use the native Korean number system. The word apple in Korean is 사과, so 2 apples would be 사과 2개. What if you need a lot more apples? How about 120 apples? Since 120 is above 99, you change to the Sino-Korean number system. So 120 apples in Korean would be 사과 120개. Let's do an example with time. Let's say someone asks you the time and it's 2:35 in the afternoon. How would you answer? It's a little tricky. First, to read the hours, you'll be using the native Korean number and the counter for hours, which is 시. So 2 o'clock will be 2시, using the native Korean number for 2. However, to read the minutes, you'll need the Sino-Korean number and the counter for minutes, 분. So 35 minutes will be 35분, using the Sino-Korean number for 35. Then, put the word for afternoon at the beginning, which is 오후. Altogether, it will be 오후 2시 35분입니다. It's 2:35 in the afternoon. There's no quick and easy way for remembering the rules for when to use which number system. However, there are some basic general guidelines. Learn those and you'll be good for many different situations in Korean. Remember, we have videos on both number systems at KoreanClass1on.com, so be sure to check them out. How was it? Did I help you clear things up? Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I'll answer some of your most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, how do I introduce myself in Korean? You can introduce yourself in 3 different ways in Korean. The most polite version, which ends in 입니다. The most common one, which ends in 예요 or 이에요. And the most casual version, which ends in 야 or 이야. Let's see some situations where you need to introduce yourself. Let's say you're at a job interview. In this case, you want to use the most polite version. For example, if I want to say my name is Jae-hwi Lee, using this version, I'll say 이재휘입니다, using 입니다 at the end. It's safe to use this introduction in any formal or professional setting. If you want to be polite but not too formal, you can use the 예요 or 이에요 ending. The ending depends on whether your name ends in a vowel or consonant. Since my name is Jae-hwi, which ends in a vowel, I'll use 예요. So the whole introduction will be 제휘예요. If your name ends in a consonant, like the common Korean female name 지현, then you use the 이에요 ending. Therefore, the whole introduction will be 지현이에요, using 이에요 at the end. This is the most common way to introduce yourself. The last version is really casual, so be careful when you use it. Again, the ending depends on whether your name ends in a vowel or consonant. With my name, Jaehui, I'll use the ya ending. Therefore, the whole phrase would sound like 제휘야. For the name I mentioned before, 지현, she would use the 이야 ending, so her introduction would sound like 지현이야. You can use this version only when you're absolutely sure that person is younger than you or the same age. However, once you're out of school, it's better to use the more polite forms. And that's it. Just pick the appropriate introduction for your situation. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time. Hi everybody, Jay here. Welcome to Ask a Teacher, where I answer some of the most common Korean questions. The question for this lesson is, what are some ways to say goodbye in Korean? In formal Korean, there are two ways to say goodbye. One for the person who is leaving and the other for the person who is staying. If you're the one leaving, you say 안녕히 계세요, meaning stay well. Then the other person will respond by saying 안녕히 가세요, meaning go well. Let's go through some examples so you can learn how to use 안녕히 계세요 and 안녕히 가세요 correctly. Let's say you're at a restaurant and you've just paid for your meal. As you get up to leave, the restaurant staff says 안녕히 가세요. How do you respond? Since you're the one leaving, you'd say 안녕히 계세요. This time, you've decided to eat at home, so you order delivery. After you get your food, you want to thank the delivery person and say goodbye. First, say the formal Korean word for thank you, which is 감사합니다. Then, since you're the one staying, you say 안녕히 가세요. Let's do one more. Let's say you were invited to a formal gathering and you see some guests leaving. You're going to stay a little longer, so what do you say? That's right, 안녕히 가세요. Now it's a little later and you're ready to go home. What do you say to the host? Right, you say 안녕히 계세요. If you want to say goodbye using informal Korean, you can say 잘 가, which corresponds with 안녕히 가세요, meaning go well, or 잘 있어, which corresponds with 안녕히 계세요, meaning stay well. How was it? Have you got the hang of it now? Please leave any more questions in the comments below and I'll try to answer them. See you next time.
Want to speed up your language learning? Take your very first lesson with us. You'll start speaking in minutes and master real conversations. Sign up for your free lifetime account. Just click the link in the description.